Hi, I'm Sean, and
I'm Wesley.
we'd like to thank you all for coming out today, and this is our boat creation project.
The purpose of our project was to engineer a two-person boat.
And we also wanted to engineer a mechanical system that could propel our boat without the use of an engine.
And learn the engineering process better in a real-life situation. Deciding on a project was a difficult step for us. It took a lot of time. We had many great ideas, such as scuba diving gear and using the power of water to create electricity, and even an airplane. In the end, we decided on a boat. We wanted to use the school's resource in creating a model. We used the CNC printing machine to create our final model and original models, as you can see here. The CNC machine takes away material from a block of wood to create a shape. I also researched our waterproofing portion of the project. In order for our model and boat to last multiple tests, we wanted to make it completely waterproof and do well. We used fiberglass on the bottom and rubber paint all along the edges. We also used a rubber spray to airtight any holes. We also lastly used caulking for the very end and very little holes to caulk the ends of the boat up. The materials we had already included many tools such as drills, screws, rasps, files, and clamps. We also had leftover wood from projects and varnish. Also, the school was very kind in providing acrylic sheets from the wood shop. Materials that we had to buy were 2x2s, also 2 very large sheets of wood. We bought lots of screws for connecting wood to wood, and bolts for connecting the acrylic sheets to the ribs. Also, we bought vinyl in the front and fiberglass and resin to make the waterproofing well. In the end, Home Depot gave us a very generous 70% off, and we only spent $85 together on the whole boat.
So my part of the project for the researching phase is I researched into the hull shape. So the hull is the outside of the boat, and so to come up with that, we performed tinfoil experiments we made boats out of tinfoil, and we put pennies in them to see how they would float in the water. So what we came up with is we wanted to have our boat with a flat bottom because that would be pretty stable, and also that's the most feasible way to build a boat because wood comes in flat shapes. And also we want a flat back for the same reason. And also we wanted the boat to be wide and come to a point much similar to a rowboat. Alright, so another part that I researched is how boats balance in water. So me and Wesley went to Quincy Reservoir on a canoe that I have, and so canoes are pretty skinny and they're very tipsy, they're not very stable. And we didn't want our boat to be like tipsy, we wanted it to be fairly stable, so we decided to make it wide like a rowboat. Another thing that I researched was the propulsion method for our boat. We started out wanting to have a paddle system like shown in the top right image, but we did not have enough time to complete it, so we resolved to go to an easier, more rudimentary temporary fix of oars and oarlocks. So the oars, as you can see, they get the job done, and they also we made the oarlocks out of string. So we tied them on, and they work well, but it's not like a permanent fix. And so, as Wesley mentioned, we received acrylic sheets from the school, and I needed to research, because neither of us knew anything about acrylic sheets, I needed to research on how to join the sheets together. So I found this really neat chemical. It's called IPS Weldon 16, and it creates a chemical reaction that actually melts the sheets together. Well, it merges the sheets together to become one sheet. The only problem with this is stores locally don't have it, so we would have to order it online, and that would just take too long to come in. And so we went to Home Depot and we asked around, and we found this Loctite adhesive sealant caulking, which is meant for acrylic, it's meant for wood, and it was actually meant for boats. So this was the perfect stuff that we want. And also it was a caulking, so we could seal up our whole boat with it. And another thing is we needed to bolt the acrylic sheets onto the ribs of the boat, because if we just used screws, the acrylic sheets would probably split and break, whereas the bolts distribute the pressure more evenly across the acrylic sheets. And the last thing that I researched was our application of our materials that Wesley talked about. So for the sheets of plywood, we use them for the bottom and the back of the boat, because they would be wide and sturdy, and we could do a lot with it. Another really smart purchase that we did was construction self-tapping screws. Because when you screw in screws into wood, normal screws can split the wood, and that will cause problems later on. And what self-tapping screws do is they have like a notch that it drills out the wood as it's screwing it in. So that probably reduced our time in half, because we don't have to pre-drill any of the screw holes. Also, we cut the 2x2s for the ribs with the miter saw at an angle, so they could be the angle that we wanted from SolidWorks. And the acrylic sheets, we used them for the hole because they were very flexible, and we could shape them to any curve that we needed. And also they're waterproof. Water's not going to damage the acrylic sheets. And we used bolts, nuts, and washers to evenly distribute the pressure throughout the acrylic sheets. And unfortunately, we did not have enough acrylic sheets to do the whole boat, so we resolved to using vinyl for the front, because vinyl is waterproof and it's decently flexible. The only downside is it's fairly flimsy, but we have it supported well enough so it's not a problem. And then we also used the Loctite adhesive to seal off the boat, and then we did the waterproofing process to make sure the wood would not get damaged.
Like all projects, the initial design and the final product is very different. Our initial design was very rounded on the bottom and was very curved in the back. We ended up changing this design because of how difficult it was to create it on SolidWorks and create our SolidWorks model and our end product exactly the same. So we made a new design that was more cubic and more squared. We used this design very much when creating the boat. We used the lengths of the ribs on the SolidWorks file to find how long to cut the ribs and where to put them exactly on the boat. We also added supports to each rib because we thought it was going to be a little bit smaller, and added the dimensions in the end because our boat was shorter than it was in the project. Here's our final design on SolidWorks. As you can see, it's very similar to our actual product. And as you can see in the photos, we have the paddles and the ribs, and you even may be able to see the supports on each rib and the wood that attaches the front to the rear of the boat.
And so for the design portion, since I've had a little bit more experience with the materials process of putting materials in on SolidWorks, I put all the materials in so it would look exactly like the boat. I put the vinyl in the front, the acrylic sheets on the side. I put a rubber coating on the back of the boat, and then I also put a rubber coating on the bottom of the boat. And we made the wood and all the materials, the density that we actually calculated out from the materials that we have. So, yeah. So for the timeline and progress for the construction phase, So really the first part that we did is we had to gather all our materials together, whether that be bringing it from home, getting it from the school, or getting it from the store. But so we gathered our materials, and then we started creating our ribs, because they're the backbone, they're the support for the boat. And we made those in the a robotics shop and with the miter saw, and then we ran out of room, so we needed to move into another spot. So we moved to the auto shop, and that's where we started cutting out the bottom of our boat, and we merged the two pieces of the bottom together with the ribs and other supports. And so then we moved to Wesley's house, so we'd have even more room, we'd have more time to work on it, and we attached the ribs to the bottom of the boat. We put the acrylic sheets on for the siding, and we put the vinyl in the front, and then finally the last couple steps are waterproofing the boat after we had it basically all constructed. So we did the caulking, and then we did the fiberglass on the bottom, and then we rubber painted the boat so everything was sealed off and the wood won't get damaged. So this is our display. Could you hit play on the video?
Titanic 2.0. Let's see how far it goes this time. Dang!
So that's a quick video of our boat in action at Cherry Creek Reservoir, and you could see it was working like a rowboat, and it was floating very well. And we used the paddles, and they worked. And this is our boat that we built. As you saw in the design, it looked very similar to the design because we built the boat off the design. So just some things to note. You can see, well, I don't know if you can see it, but there we have supports on the ribs. On here you can see the beads of caulking that we did on the sides, and we caulked over every single bolt so the metal wouldn't rust. We have, so in front of the vinyl we have a layer of acrylic sheet on the bottom and on the top, so it gives it that extra support. And we have the paddles on as well. And another thing is for transportation, we had to put a red flag on it because it was hanging off the edge of a car, so we needed to put that on as well.
We connected the oars to the ribs by a rope tying a knot, and that gave it mobility so we could move it in oar and actually move it.
Also, for the seats that we did, we haven't made any formal seats. We intend to work on that, but we used these crates in it temporarily, and those worked really well. Also, we can stand up in the boat, and it was just really good.
Very stable. So problems and solutions. Deciding on a project was a problem at the beginning of the year. Lucky for us, we decided on a boat, and it's worked very well. Curves on SolidWorks. Our first design was very curvy, and it was very difficult for us to decide on how we were going to make it and how we were going to design it. And lucky for us, we changed the design and made it more cubic and more squared, and it ended up benefiting us a lot. Also, materials were an issue. We did not know originally how much it was going to cost and where we were going to get the materials from. Lucky for us, Home Depot gave us a very big discount, and the school provided the acrylic sheets that were very useful. The CNC machine actually had kind of a malfunction while creating one of our models, and it did not completely finish. So instead of really worrying about it and kept on working on it, we ended up just moving on and using what we had. Funding for the boat. Originally, we assumed that the boat was going to cost about $500, and we were kind of not sure how we were going to pay that, or if the school was going to fund, or whatever. But in the end, it only cost $85, which was very feasible. Also, supports. Before we tested it, we were unsure how much pressure was going to be on the ribs pushing into the boat from each side. So we were told by a couple engineers and the auto tech teacher to put supports on the ribs just to add a little extra strength if there was some forces pushing. Also, waterproofing the boat. This is very important because you do not want water just flowing inside your boat. So we spent lots of time on that, and when we tested, there were 2 very minor leaks. So it was very good that we found where they are and that we can fix them very easily.
Alright, so for the problems and solutions from the construction phase, as Wesley mentioned, our ribs needed support. So we put supports on them, we braced the ribs. We needed to merge the wooden sheets together, and so it would be waterproof and also it would give us the structure that we needed. So we initially glued on blocks of wood onto it, but once we put the ribs on, we realized that it was going to be perfect, it was fine. The ribs provided ample support for it. And in the front, also we put in, we layered many 2x2s on it so it would have that extra support. And so for the merging the acrylic sheets, we used the adhesive Loctite caulking on it, and that it glued it together, it sealed them up. It was fabulous. And also, we did have a problem with some of the acrylic sheets breaking with our bolts, and we figured out that we could make a patch for it with the broken acrylic sheets. So we just patched on a patch with 4 bolts, and that it works well. There's no further problems. And another thing that we did to prevent more of the sheets breaking is we used a rasp and file to file down the ribs. So the acrylic sheets would be able to curve over the ribs smoothly. And we also ran out of acrylic sheets, like I mentioned, and we used vinyl for the front. So, like any project, you need to do calculations before you test it. So we calculated that the weight of our boat was 180 pounds, and its volume was 76.1 cubic feet. And so 1 cubic feet of water is 62.427 pounds. So we would multiply 76.1 feet cubed times 62.427 pounds to get a total weight that our boat could hold of 4,750.69 pounds. And then we would also have to subtract the weight of the boat from it, and so our maximum capacity weight is 4,570.69 pounds.
In order to find how much the boat can hold safely, we divided the max weight that it can hold by a safety factor of 3 to find that the boat can weigh 1,523 pounds safely. We also, when we were testing it, had 7 people jump in the boat, and it safely held us all, and added all the people's weights together, and it came to about 1,100 pounds. So we were very happy about that. Also, recently we went to the Cherry Creek Reservoir to test our boat and to see how it'd do. We got there around 3 o'clock, and slowly we put the boat in the pool and we jumped inside, and we took it out pretty far, and it did really well.
So we also modified our way of paddling because standing up on the sides using the paddles was easier, more effective way to paddle. Just because of the length of our paddles, the size, and how they went through the water, but either way still worked. And also as Wesley mentioned, we fit 7 people in it, so we were pretty proud of our boat.
Also, as you can see in the very bottom picture, there was minor leakage in the very front and the bottom, so that was very nice. Also, we were very thankful that our instructor, Mr. Pearl, was able to come out and jump in the boat with us and go out pretty far, so that was really nice of him.
So for our next steps of our boat, we need to test it and improve it more, whether that be adding additional supports, seats, or even just waterproofing it better. We want to make a paddle system that can propel our boat better than just a couple of homemade oars. And along with that paddle system idea, if anybody out there has an extra engine that we could borrow, we'd gratefully take it.
Also, recently we've been transporting the boat on a trailer that is actually a little too small for the boat, hence why we had to use the red shirt in the front to notify people that we're transporting it. But We plan to have a better means of transportation in the future, just because it is difficult to move it around.
All right, so I have a truck with racks on top of it, and we know that we can put the boat on it. We made it dimensioned so that it could fit up there. All we need to do is put some eye hooks on the front and the back, so it will actually be able to be secured down to the top of my truck. So we plan to do that, and also the bandana and red shirt is so we don't get pulled over by the cops when we're driving our boat. Here's our bibliography with all our resources that we used. And we'd like to thank all of you for coming out today to watch our presentation. Is there any questions or comments before we leave you?
How do you prevent the boats from like getting mold or decaying in the water?
We used varnish on the inside of it and fiberglass and waterproofing to preserve the wood so that if the water gets inside, it would not rot the wood out. And we are also in Colorado, which is very dry, so there's a lesser chance of that happening.
We also use rubber paint on it as well.
Any other questions?
In your calculations, you divided by 3. What was the purpose of dividing by 3, and where'd you come up with that 3 number?
So on every these chairs, they have a safety factor of like 5 or 3, and so that's so you can safely hold a maximum weight without actually pushing it to the exact limits. And so most things have a safety factor of 3 or 5, and that's where you divide your total weight or total capacity by that safety factor number.
Any other questions?
What would make your boats better compared to traditional boats?
An engine. Any other questions?